Great. So thanks, Evie. Right, hopefully we're all back in place now. Thanks, Evie. Yeah, so Sagrada Familia, plan completion in 2023. I mean, I just think I've heard it before, really, but I'm sure I've heard it before somewhere down the line that it's planned, but it never gets finished. And we'll see. Hopefully, there'll be a big sort of celebration and a big event to mark the completion of the amazing Sagrada Familia, which would be good. Brilliant. Okay, right. Welcome back, everyone. So, yeah, we're talking about surrealism now with Dali. So, 1931. And any sort of, it's a painting. It's what it's got in there: the melting watches, the strange figure on the beach, all that strange metal thing over on the left, whatever it is. What about context-wise? So, is there a context that the surrealists are really important to the surrealist ideas and their work? If you've managed to have a think about that, you could put it in the chat. I think there's probably a couple, but there's one obviously main one, really. Anyone got any? Clara, imaginatively visualize human concepts and experiences. Yeah, that's definitely what they're trying to do, isn't it? That's definitely a good summing up of their aim. But I guess I'm talking of one word, sort of like, or one phrase context that their work connects with or works from. I guess what Clara's saying there is it's kind of like, it is like almost like an abstract, imaginative, interpretation of our feelings, isn't it? So it's kind of using representational stuff that we know to visualize some complicated ideas. Alice, yes, good. Okay, so that's the one I was probably searching for. Scientific, very much a scientific context. So Freud, psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, psychology, I suppose, dreams, obviously dreams, the interpretation of dreams. So Freud is the context. Freud, science, and Freud is the context that they. I mean, there is debate about how much they. I mean, obviously they work from their dreams, but there's a debate about how much they actually read Freud or researched Freud or anything like that. I'm not sure that they did, but basically, Breton, who started the surrealists, André Breton, had that idea of automatic writing, just writing what comes into your head, or stream of consciousness sort of writing, and that went to dreams. So the unconscious, that's a Freud thing as well, isn't it? What's coming from the unconscious going into the conscious and onto the painting. So it could be said that, like, the soft watches are an unconscious symbol of the relativity of space and time. So, you've got this strange monster figure in here in the middle, which could be the sort of monster of, like, the id, the Freudian idea of that sort of part of the psyche that drives desires, So yeah, these fit really neatly into Freudian analysis, coming from the dream world. So yeah, that's a quite a nice simple context to sort of attach to a painting movement. And they are completely fascinating, a lot of the surrealist paintings, I have to say. Okay, more architecture. So we're moving on now, 1930s. We're still in this incredibly, I mean, that period between the wars was an extraordinarily fertile period for creative practice. So many important things came out at that point. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, which is, comes up in those lists of things to see before you die. Must go and see this. It's in America. Frank Lloyd Wright, architect, designer, writer, another of these polymaths. He called it, he wanted to design buildings that were in harmony with the environment. Organic architecture is a term that's been used. Okay, in 1991, architects named Falling Water, the American Institute of Architects named Falling Water the best all-time work of American architecture. I've never seen it, unfortunately, but the pictures, it does look absolutely gorgeous. Again, 1936, so the first sort of photograph to appear in this lecture, I guess, Dorothea Lange's Migrant Mother, 1936. So this was taken as part of what's called the Farm Security Administration Project, where money was given to artists, really, and photographers in particular, to record the Great Depression in the 1930s, to raise awareness about the impoverished farmers. So this is Lange's picture of Migrant Mother, showing a mother strong, dignified, with her kids around her, you know, and she's looking like into the future in a sort of thoughtful way, with dignity. So this was the one that was chosen to show the plight of migrant farm workers during the Great Depression. It's, as with all photographs of these times, there's far more to it than that. And they're really complicated. So this one was heavily set up, constructed by Lange. There are other photographs she took which showed the tent and the mess everywhere, loads of plates strewn around, rubbish. It looked terrible. And there's no way those pictures could have been used because people wouldn't have supported this. And people were complaining that there's no evidence of a father or a male figure with the family, you know. So this close-up constructed crop has managed to get rid of the rubbish and the absence of a man, which I'm not saying is at all is I agree is particularly always important, but yeah, it's a big story around this one, but it is an extraordinary photograph in many ways. Cool, blimey, they keep coming, the big hitters here. So this is an amazing piece by Picasso, Guernica, 1937. Again, start of the Second World War. A huge anti-war painting, probably the most important anti-war painting ever made. Suffering of people and animals, violence and chaos. The light bulbs represents explosion. We've got the gored horse, bulls screaming, women, flames. So this is a response to the bombing of Guernica, which is a Basque town in northern Spain by Nazi Germany and fascist Italy at the request of the Spanish nationalists. So obviously Picasso was on the side of the communists. He was a very political man and painted this in response. It's very interesting. It's in black and white. Anyone got any ideas? Just a brief one. Why black and white? And why this sort of appears to be writing here on this? Why black and white? Right? Why some writing on it? Has anyone idea what Picasso was trying to get at in terms of a context? Actually, context he was trying to reference. Anyone ideas? What context is Picasso referencing here in Guernica through the black and white and the sort of writing that's going across here? I don't think it is actually writing, but it looks like letters for writing. Has anyone got any ideas? Ideological, not quite sure what you mean there, Alice. I think it's not quite sure what you get. Yes. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Alice. I'm not quite sure that needed probably a bigger discussion. You're probably there. Clara, yeah, newspapers. You're right. That's so. Newspapers are seen obviously as the form of reporting. So the truth. Although we know that's not necessarily the case, but newspapers. So yeah, he's using the context, the language of newspapers, black and white images and text. Yeah, very good. Well done. Okay, coming a bit more up to the minute. Pollock, Autumn Rhythm number 30. which is in the Museum of Modern Art, I think, and the Met. Maybe it's in the Met. So Pollock, abstract expressionist. Okay, action painter. These are terms we use for Pollock. Abstract expressionist, abstract action painter. Distinguished example of his style. One of his most notable works. That technique of pouring or splashing liquid household paint onto the surface, enabling him to view and paint his canvases from all angles. His whole body was kind of used. There is work. There's some footage of him working, certain still photographs as well of him working. It's almost like a frenetic dancing style. And he manages to get this incredible balance and rhythm across the canvas by layering different coloured paints on top of each other, dripping. His nickname was Jack the Dripper. And he died young, of course, in a car crash, so a tragic end. Big drinker, classic abstract expressionist, living life to the full, whatever that is. But had a difficult end. It was life. But they are extraordinary. I mean, again, when you see these in the gallery, they are extraordinary paintings. And, original, let's face it, a lot of the work we see here, it's the first time someone did it. So that's why it's gained, because people do this sort of thing all the time now. But Pollock was the original action painter. Graphic designer, so we mustn't leave those out of this. And Saul Bass is probably one of the most well-known graphic designers in the history of graphic design. American, best known in his work for films. Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, Scorsese. He tried, what was interesting about Bass is tried to integrate a style, make a coherence between his designs and the films. And that was quite a big, because I think before this, there was often a system that designers used for posters and things. Whereas Bass decided, no, I'm going to make my poster in the form of the film. So this is the poster for Hitchcock's Vertigo. I mean, he's also did loads of logos as well, which are United Airlines, North American United Airlines. That tulip logo was his. There's all sorts of famous ones that he did. So, but this is beautiful, isn't it, in terms of the relationship with text and image, color, just like summing up of a film almost in one piece of graphics. Move from that quite easily to Hitchcock. So we've got Hitchcock in here. I haven't overdone the film because film is a huge area of itself, but I think we've got to have some in, and Hitchcock would have to be one of those. One of the most influential and heavily studied filmmakers in the history of cinema. The master of suspense, he's known as. 50 feature films: Psycho, Rear Window, 39 Steps, The Birds, North by Northwest, an endless list of classic films from the 19 again, gosh, we're talking 1930s, we are, aren't we? I think. So I'm just going to go back. 58, yeah. So I'm not sure when he started, maybe 30s, or maybe it was all after the Second World War. Could have been. 46 Oscar nominations, 6 wins for best. So pretty amazing. Anyway, here's a little clip of Vertigo. If you don't know Hitchcock's work, this is a short James Stewart in Vertigo. Wow, yeah. I mean, the suspense, the music, is one of the Hitchcock's obviously thing that the use of music to create suspense and drama, and the relationships he had with his actors, using similar actors over and over, and these complex, again, very Freudian sort of narratives, like characters having doppelgangers and being two different people, changing identities. complex relationships between men and women. Yeah, really sort of strong psychological ideas in Hitchcock's films. So if you've never seen one, yeah, definitely. I mean, Rear Window, for those who are interested in photography, Rear Window is the film to watch, really, because that has James Stewart as the photographer who's stuck in a wheelchair, photographing out of his window the apartment block opposite and all that goes on. Rear Window is the one to watch, I think, if you're a photographer. But anyway, they're all brilliant. Okay, another designer then. So this is Paul Rand, one of the best known corporate logo designers. So here we've got, you know, some of these are a bit out of date now, but these are the original ones. The IBM one, UPS, ABC, I mean, American Next, Yale. So these are huge, you know, amazing logos for these incredibly important institutions. I mean, they've all moved on now, but we're talking. In 1947, he published a book called Thoughts on Design, which shaped the entire future of graphic design, really. One of his largest points was the ideology that graphic design should be functionally aesthetic perfection. Yeah, but these are all so beautifully simple, aren't they? Really straightforward. So yeah, Paul Rand, very important graphic designer. Illustration. So this is Sendak, who most illustrators would put up there as one of their top, most influential illustrators. American. This is his famous Where the Wild Things Are, 1963. Born to Polish Jewish parents, his childhood was affected by the death of many of his family members during the Holocaust. So I had yeah, obviously a difficult family life over the years, and he's very sort of quite playful, but sort of dark. That's what I like about Sendak. They're very playful and childish, but there's a sort of darkness and a heaviness about them as well, which I find quite incredible. Wonderful, wonderful work. Wow. Okay. So yeah. I mean, I know I keep saying the most important, but you can't get away from Warhol as probably one of the most important artists ever, really. Pop art, obviously, the head of the pop art, one of the most influential artists of all time. I think that, you know, that the fact he's bringing advertising, celebrity culture, and artistic expression together in the 60s and using different media like painting, silk screen printing, photography, film, sculpture. You know, we talk about postmodernism. This is the start of it, really. This is 62. So I think nothing's been the same since Warhol. I mean, we can look back at Duchamp and say the urinal was a massive statement, but then we need to look at Warhol making another massive statement again. And he was a graphic designer, and that a lot of, you know, working in the media and started to work with celebrities and stuff. He had, you know, there was the Factory where there were parties and Velvet Underground playing, and lots of extraordinary musicians and artists used to hang out there. Keith Haring and Basquiat and people like that. So he was a magnet for unusual creative practices, I guess, that weren't straightforward at that time. But a lot of, I mean, you know, really complex works as well, not just someone who made simple things. I mean, this is seen as the two sides of Marilyn, you know, the diptych. So on the left, we've got, yes, the lovely, you know, beautiful Marilyn with, you know, gorgeous hair and skin and smiling, colourful. And on the right, you've got this kind of deteriorating black and white version, which is the other side of her. I mean, she was a complete, she had a really difficult life internally, but outside, she was this incredibly beautiful icon. So it's just representing the two sides of her. But it's incredibly powerful image. This idea of repetition, Warhol, obviously, we know, like repeating that. Again, it's that sort of predicting what we see now, really, when we have things repeated over and over and over. So much stuff repeated through new media. advertising, pictures of celebrities. This is 60 years ago. So he really is extremely important. I guess at the same time, Rauschenberg was, and would have both have sort of influenced each other. So painter, graphic artist, yeah, his early works were before Warhol, really. So he made these combines between 54 and 64, incorporated everyday materials, blurred the distinctions between painting and sculpture. So yeah, early days of postmodernism with Warhol, cultural references being made. And when we talk about contexts, suddenly when we look at something like this, we start to see these contexts. So you've got natural history, wildlife going on there. We've got politics. We've got space travel. So Rauschenberg's work is hinting at stuff outside of the frame, not just what we see inside visually. Okay. Rauschenberg's work is much less clear or direct than Warhol's, I'd say. His work is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more complex. Warhol's is much more sort of direct. This one. So again, a bit like the urinal, Carl Andre's works, equivalent 8, the bricks. We're talking, I think there are 8 of these, 8 different constructions, the same amount of bricks, but put in different ways. And this is, well, what about you guys? What about an art movement? What art movement does Carl Andre fit into then? We've had Surrealism, haven't we? We've had Futurism of Brancusi. We've had the Dada. We've had Post-Impressionism. We've had all those kind of things. Does anyone know what art movement we might put Carl Andre in? Yay, what an EV. Very good. Minimalism. Yes, that's right. Brutalist. Yeah, Beatrix, not bad. I would say that's a good shout. That's a good shout. I mean, brutalism is normally attached to architecture. So that's an interesting call, really, because it does look like a brutalist building. I'll give you that. So that's very interesting. But yeah, minimalism is the art movement, I suppose. So this is the fire bricks. There's 120 arranged in this specific arrangement, 2 layers, 6 by 10, 120. So there were 8 of these all arranged in different ways. So it's a very sort of rigid sort of instructions from Andre about how to represent them, and they caused an absolute stir. Because I think didn't the Tate buy them or something, and where people like builders were coming and putting a load of bricks outside and stuff like that, and asking the Tate to buy them. There was all sorts of stuff like that going on, because people just saw it as completely ridiculous. But again, it's one of those acts which just changes the way one thinks about the world. It's kind of like abstraction, isn't it? But they're very beautiful. If you see beauty in sculpture, and if you see beauty in forms and beauty in, then you see beauty in these. I mean, they are the tone, the texture, the grid. It's just a very beautiful thing, and it's again that thing we were talking about with abstraction, isn't it? It's getting us back to the simple things, simplicity of vision and simplicity of thought. Away from, we might look at bricks, it's like sort of Beatrix is hinting at the idea of architecture, think architecture, but actually that's about it as far as we go. And then it's when we look at it for longer, there's more going on here. So there's that really, really sort of big, sort of like dynamic between the building and abstraction. So yeah, it's a very, very important piece of work. Well done, Carl. Okay, a bit more up to date. 81. So we've got a designer who's a more modern sort of designer, I guess. Again, another German industrial designer. Attached Braun, the German company, known for classic design items, clocks and shavers and record players and radios, that kind of thing. He had this phrase, which is less but better, or sort of belief in less as a design quality. So they have a timeless quality. So a lot of white, very simple, nothing too complicated. So I had a huge worldwide reputation and recognition as a designer, particularly attached to Braun. But we can see how, like Apple and stuff, when they first started the Mac computers, the Apple computers and phones and that sort of thing, you can see how they would have been. Jobs and people like that would have been very influenced by Dieter Ramsey's designs, I think. Okay, more contemporary fashion. Vivienne Westwood. And when I say, what we haven't got in this is music. Obviously, there are musical points, which are so influential contextually to visual arts. And this is one where punk music, was just as important as all the designers and the artworks that came out of punk. So the Sex Pistols are just such an important thing culturally and contextually for especially Vivienne Westwood, the designer. Yeah, punk fashion into the mainstream. So she made clothes for Malcolm McLaren. Here he is on the left. He had a boutique called Sex in the King's Road, and these two synthesized clothing and music to shape the whole 1970s punk scene. Yeah, and Vivienne Westwood said she viewed punk as a way of seeing if one could put a spoke in the system. So it was all very, very anti-system, very, very anti-establishment. And things quite been the same in sort of street fashion and street since this 1970s. As the famous "God Save the Queen" shirt she's wearing with the safety pins and stuff, and the cutout text. And here we got straps and buckles and tartan, bringing all these things together. Really, really revolutionary design. Right in the middle of postmodern art now, we've got Cindy Sherman, photographic self-portraits depicting herself in different contexts and various imagined characters. This is untitled film stills. So there's around 100 photographs of herself. Many of the roles of women in performance media. So yeah, they look like sort of B movies or art house films. These sort of minor characters in these films. She looks different in all of them. There's a famous story about Cindy Sherman. She had a big exhibition opening in the 80s, I think, in London. Some really big museum. And she came to it and nobody really knew who she was. Because in all her self-portraits, she looks completely different all the time. I'm pretty sure that's an exaggerated story, but I think there's some truth in it. But they're very like the Hitchcock films. They feel like sort of Hitchcock characters, the suspense and what's going to happen next. Again, this is a huge move on from what was going on with photography up to this point. So it's very conceptual, art-based photography. But most people who do self-portrait work could reference Sherman in some way, I think. Same sort of time. So Basquiat, Jean-Michel Basquiat, first got fame really as part of Samo, which was a graffiti duo, wrote enigmatic epigrams in the Lower East Side of Manhattan during the 70s. So this was the point where sort of rap, punk, street art coalesced with hip hop music culture. So this is a huge time, isn't it? And early 80s, he started to make these wonderful neo-expressionist paintings being exhibited in galleries and museums internationally. So he moved from the street to the gallery. And he used social commentary for his paintings it's like a tool for his sort of introspection and for identifying his experiences in the Black community and attacks on power structures and racism. I mean, he was a friend of Warhol, and like Warhol, he's just pretty much as influential, really, in all fields of creative practice. I mean, these are extraordinary paintings, these sort of like jumbled up texts, these sort of scars, rips, and sort of angry faces. They could be on the street or they could be in the gallery, coming out of just basic sort of graffiti art on the street. Yeah, absolutely. And, the link with music as well is the sort of rap culture at that time is, yeah, they've got so much, so much going on for them. Terrific stuff. I think this is the final one. Yeah, bringing us up to 2000. So we've got Louise Bourgeois, incredibly important contemporary artist, French-American, best known for her large-scale sculptures and installations, I guess. And this is Maman, means spider. This is how it was exhibited at Tate Modern out in the outside. And she is another artist who's explored so many themes over the course of her long career. Domesticity, the family, sexuality and the body, as well as death and the unconscious. So, once you start to look at Louise Bourgeois, the contexts that she works with are huge. There's lots of them. Like I say, family, sexuality, the unconscious. Yeah, so an artist who's very, very interesting to sort of unpick. And her drawings are fantastic, actually, as well. So big installations of sculptures and drawings. So here we are, up to the year 2000. I mean, like I say, I can't stress enough, there's so much not in here. I mean, so many people who are not considered in here. So maybe we've just finished with putting in the chat, is there anyone who you think, you're surprised is not included in that, coming up to the year 2000? Who were you expecting to see that maybe I didn't put in? I mean, I've got loads. I ummed and ahed about. Banksy, well, I think that's in the next one. So I think this is up to 2000. So the next one's 2000 to 2024. So I think he's in the next one. He might not be, but I might need to update it to put him in because he's very important. So he'll be in the next one, Ray. Not sure if he did anything before 2000. I might be wrong. I don't know when he started to or we don't know who they are. So when they started, I'm not sure, but I think it was post 2000. Anyone else? Anyone would have expected to be in there who isn't? Yeah, Frida Kahlo. Yeah, definitely on my list of ums and ahs, and I think we could do with more representation of women from those early periods of up to the 1940s, 50s, mainly men, isn't it? Dominating that, and I think Frida Kahlo is just as important as a lot of those. So, yeah, good one, Evie. Frida Kahlo could be well have been in there. Anyone else got any? They're missing. Yeah, the Bayeux Tapestry, that is good. Yeah, if we're going to have some of those works I've put in, then the Bayeux Tapestry is an incredibly important cultural artifact. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but actually now you mention it, Clara, that's not a bad shout at all. Yeah. Banksy. Okay, Ray's just looked up Banksy. Yeah, active in the 90s, not known, famous until after the 2000s. Yeah. Thanks for adding a little bit of substance to the Banksy debate. I got a friend who photographed him, actually. Interesting story. So I used to live in Bristol in the 1980s. 80s and 90s. And my friend's a photographer and photographed him. He's got photographs of him. Won't tell me who he is, obviously. Photographed him in the early days for the local magazine. The one that was used was like a silhouette, a very sort of difficult to define silhouette against a window. But yeah, he knows him, who he is, but he won't. As with a lot of people in Bristol, they will not say, because they don't want to be that person who's completely ostracized from the Bristol creative community or by anybody by sort of. So it's an incredible story, really. Anyone else got anyone missing from that lot? From that first? Wilton diptych. I'm not sure what that is. Sorry, Evie. I'm not sure what the Wilton diptych is. Not heard of that one. Not to say it's not really important, but is that an artist or is that a... Oh, okay. Oh, I'll look that one up. I mean, I was thinking like Matisse is pretty important. Could be in there. Yeah, that was one I was thinking this morning. Why isn't there a Matisse in there? Anyway, what about the last question before we shut down then? And what about which one of those, all of those you've seen, do you think, if you had to choose one, was the most important, which one would it be? Of all of those that has had most influence or is the most important work up to the year 2000, what would it be? I think mine would be, God, it's difficult, isn't it? I think the piece I like the most and I would live with the most would be the Van Gogh, I think. Yeah, well done, Charlotte. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. So Charlotte and I agreeing then that the Van Gogh is the one that but I think in terms of most important, it would have to be the Duchamp or the Warhol, I think, in terms of, changing how we think about art. Anyone else got any ones that they feel what's the one that you couldn't? Yeah, Warhol too, Beatrix, yeah. Just works on so many levels, doesn't it? Good. I mean, I was tempted with Warhol to put two in and have one of his films because they are extraordinary in terms of being so far ahead of the game. Screen tests of the actors and just some of those, the Empire State Building at night, that great long film of his when the lights come on and go off. That's it. It goes on for hours. They are so conceptually ahead of their time. Anyone else got any out of that lot which they feel it's interesting that we choose, although we've got fashion designers and that kind of thing, it's interesting how it is generally the artists who make, a iconic fine art piece or whatever, that the ones that are seen as the most important, isn't it? We don't usually choose an architect or a designer or a photographer or a fashion designer. It's normally a painter or a yeah, they're the ones that Clara likes the Renaissance artists, of course. Yeah, Michelangelo, Da Vinci. Yeah, they, when we think about that time, how clever they are, and the technique as well is quite extraordinary. Of those people. Brilliant. Okay, well that was great fun, and thank you so much for Hitchcock. Good one, Ray. Yes. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's my favorite filmmakers. So why not? So many aspects to that. Anyway, we'll leave it there. So thanks so much, everyone. It's been great. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Beatrix. Thank you all. See you next time then. We'll go from 2000 to 2024, and I'm going to get going to get Banksy in there because I don't think he's in there at the moment, or they. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your nice comments. Have a good few weeks, and see you next time. Bye. Thanks, everyone.